First up tonight, we have approval of a World Refugee Day resolution. So the 20th is World Refugee Day, and last year we passed a resolution. I think it may have been the first that I can remember the city doing during that time period. And I think we paired it up with Welcoming City very close together in terms of our actions to recognize the value that our city has placed on having diversity and being welcoming to that diversity. So instead of a speech beforehand, I'll read the resolution and open up for comments, questions, concerns. The resolution reads, in support of June 20th being recognized as World Refugee Day in Winooski. Whereas the city of Winooski, Vermont is proud to be the most diverse community in the state of Vermont and in our region of the United States. And whereas nearly 60 million people worldwide are displaced by violence, political strife, or natural disaster and forced to become refugees. And whereas Winooski, Vermont recognized the tremendous work of statewide organizations like the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants Vermont Office, local entities such as the Association of Africans Living in Vermont, and the international tone set by the United Nations Refugee Agency. And whereas Winooski, Vermont has a long and proud tradition of being a community that welcomes refugees as new Americans and valued members of our community since Vermont became a refugee resettlement location in 1989. And whereas we recognize the value that the diversity in our community contributes to the vibrancy of our unique cultural fabric in Winooski, which makes our community an exciting place to live. And whereas the residents of Winooski have seized upon many opportunities to develop supportive networks for welcoming new residents and regularly demonstrate public expressions of support for initiatives to welcome refugees as neighbors and valued members of the community. And whereas we recognize that diversity in our community sparks curiosity among community members and offers an opportunity for residents to experience a cultural richness when they explore the different life experiences of their neighbors. And whereas we are able to identify important civic roles that new Americans play in our community as neighbors, parents, and active participants for local events, boards, commissions, and committees. And whereas we recognize the important contribution that former refugees bring to the economic vitality of our community, our region, and our state, acting as valued employees, innovative business leaders, entrepreneurs, and consumers. And whereas Winooski, Vermont prospers when we work together with all of our neighbors to achieve a sense of community where all feel welcome, valued, safe. And whereas Winooski, Vermont recognizes that global resettlement needs dictate that our community, region, state, and nation will be called upon to offer refuge to those who are displaced, and we stand in support of refugees having the right to become our neighbors and rebuild their lives in their new home. And now, therefore, the City of Winooski declares support for welcoming refugees to our community regardless of their nationality, place of origin, religion, or race. And the City of Winooski does hereby proclaim June 20th as World Refugee Day. And as we stand united to commemorate the strength, courage, and resilience of the millions of refugees around the world, including refugees who have come to call Winooski home. Okay. Any comments, thoughts, concerns?
Always impressed by your resolution reading.
You're getting very good at it.
Very good.
I think this is great. It begs the question, where are we at with Sanctuary City conversation that kind of started a while ago?
Mm-hmm.
So our hope is to come to you at the July meeting with a discussion of that, and at the request, actually, I believe Councillor Corrigan give you our memo on that 2 weeks in advance. We think it's an important conversation to give you some time to think about it and vet with the community. Eric and I have also talked about this. So that is our current plan.
Perfect.
The other thing that sort of part of your city update and reading this resolution caused me to think about, in terms of the economic development plan stakeholders, are we including Association of Africans Living in Vermont, other agencies, not just that support the new Americans in our community, but other populations that may not naturally sort of have a seat at that table? You listed a lot, but I just wanted to confirm that those other groups are or are not at the table.
We have done outreach to those groups. We set aside time specifically for 2 new American resident groups as well, one Bhutanese, one Somali, and we've also done community partner outreach to those organizations. We have not had the response that we would like to have, but we will continue to do outreach and continue to invite people to the table.
Anyone else?
I think this is a great statement and really important to make, especially in the face of the rhetoric that we're hearing nationally. Making sure all of our community members feel welcomed and supported, and then just making sure we also continue that into our policy. So for instance, we're going to be having a discussion in regards to housing and the charge of the Housing Commission. It's just important that we not just lay out these resolutions and say we have this public will, but that makes its way into actual mechanisms that supports and improves the lives of our community members. I love it. I think this is really well written.
Agreed. Action behind the resolution is important. So the words aren't hollow. Any questions, concerns from the public? Great. And so with that, I would entertain a motion for approval of the City Council resolution in support of making June 20th being recognized as World Refugee Day in Winooski.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Eric, second by Nicole. Any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries.